Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I suppose all of you have received the news that were announced last Thursday by the Nobel-prize committee that the South Korean author Han Kang received the Nobel-prize for literature for her, quote, intense poetic prose that confronts historical traumas and exposes the fragility of human life, end of quote. In this video I want to talk about the 4 novels that have so far been published in English. I want to comment a little bit on her writing style, and I also want to comment a little bit on the quote that I've just been giving you as an explanation from the Nobel Prize Committee for choosing her as the new Nobel Prize laureate. I hope you enjoy the video. Thank you for watching. Han Kang was born in 1970 in Gwangju, which is in South Korea. And she moved with her family to Seoul at the age of 10 because her father, who had been formerly a teacher, had decided to become a full-time writer and to quit his teaching jobs. So they moved to the capital, and there she studied Korean literature at the Yonsei University, and she also made her literary debut quite early as a poet by publishing 5 poems, including Winter in Seoul. And from then on she's also been writing prose, and she's also been receiving literary prizes in Korea from the 1990s onwards. So she was like an award-winning author from early on. But the attention for her work only grew within the West within the last 10 to 15 years because the major works have only been published then. So the 4 novels that I want to talk about today are first The Vegetarian, then Human Acts, then The White Book, and lastly Greek Lessons. I haven't read Greek Lessons myself yet, but I am determined to do so very soon. But all the others I have read, so I can also give you my own opinion on them. So I hope you enjoy my short introduction into each of these. So The Vegetarian was originally published in South Korea in 2007, but it was also her breakthrough novel on the international stage when it was translated into other languages. And I will shortly tell you what it is about. So it is about a woman called Hyung-hye. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And she decides one day that she's going to give up eating meat. And she always has the weird dreams that tell her that eating meat is something bad, and she has very vivid images of what happens when she eats meat and how her body changes and what that does to the environment and everything around her. So she just completely decides to give up meat from one day to the other, and her husband doesn't really know how to deal with it, and he just wants her to be normal, and he also takes her to her family and tells them that something's wrong with her, and he just really see how the whole family, the society, nobody knows how to deal with this changing condition of Hyung-hye. So that becomes a lot more extreme throughout the novel. So in the beginning she's only deciding to become a vegetarian, but she slowly begins to withdraw from reality, so she seems to descend into kind of madness that is really difficult to grasp also as a reader who does not really know what's really going on inside her. And it even culminates in the desire to become a plant in the end, so really to merge with nature. And it's really interesting to see how Han Kang writes that. And it is also interesting to see that you never really get the perspective of Hyung-hye herself. You only get the perspective of the people closest to her, because the novel is split into 3 parts. In the first part, the perspective is from her husband, the second is her brother-in-law, and the third is her sister. And it's super interesting to see how their perspectives also shape your perspective as a reader and on everything that's going on and how it's perceived. So that's really, really a strong debut on the international stage, I think, that she's given here. Just as a little bit of background, the novel was first published as 3 separate novellas, which were later combined into a single novel. And Han Kang has stated that the idea for The Vegetarian came to her after reflecting on how humans consume animals, leading her to question the nature of violence and repression within the human body. So also reflecting on South Korean culture and South Korean society with its like more or less patriarchal structure and rigid expectations of women, serves as a backdrop for Hyung Jae's rebellion. So it's not only like a rebellion against this normalized practice of eating meat that we're like doing since the Stone Age basically, but it's more also like a reflection on how society expects women to be, because she's also always examined and judged as a woman, not only as a person who stops eating meat. She's also like in her role as a wife, as a sister, as a daughter. And you see especially the male gaze onto her, like from her father, from her husband, from the brother-in-law. And this also switches then when you see the perspective of her sister. And I think it's just an absolutely extraordinary work. It stands out because of these themes that she's working on, like the violence against nature, the violence against our own bodies in the end as well, and like the questions of bodily autonomy and repression. How are we repressing each other, ourselves? What kind of a society are we actually living in? And the novel uses just this like very simple act of refusing to eat meat as a metaphor for a much deeper issue of control, passivity and violence, particularly towards women. And that is a very powerful picture that she's using here. And also Han's prose is absolutely extraordinary because it's quite simple in a way, but it's also very haunting. So for example, she uses especially very strong images, especially in the dreams that I've also been talking about. She shows like the difference between the beautiful, soothing nature and the brutality and also fragility of our everyday lives and our interactions as humans. It's really difficult to describe actually, but I think that's just like this opposite between nature and humankind. So that's something that she depicts very well, and she also explores in very much detail. The great thing about the novel is actually that she raises so many questions, but she doesn't really judge on a very straightforward way. You know, it's subtle and it's simple and it's poetic and it's very deep. You just have to read it. It's absolutely amazing. Just give it a go if you're interested in South Korean culture and in how women were treated, are treated, and what this whole idea of stopping to eat meat and how are we as humans connected to nature and also abandoning it in a way or trying to escape from it. If these are questions that you're interested in, then I would definitely give the novel a go. Just a few last words on The Vegetarian. It has been receiving the International Booker Prize in 2016, so it has been gaining wide appraisal internationally, and from then on I think Han Kang's work was also a lot more popular, and that's just something you can keep in mind. So that's also might be the reason that you see the novel more on display than the other ones that I will talk about now. So the second novel, Human Acts, it was written in 2014 and it is the most intense of the 4 novels that I'm talking about. And if you're having not the strongest nerves of you, or if you have difficulty reading about harsh violence and massacres, then just think about at which time you pick up the novel. That's just my recommendation. Not to say that not everyone should read it. It is set in the aftermath of the Gwangju uprising, which is like one of the darkest periods in South Korean history. during which hundreds of civilians were killed by government forces for protesting authoritarian rule. And the story is anchored around the young boy Dong-ho, who is just a schoolboy and who takes part in these protests and who helps looking after the people that have died and who actively engages in this whole protest. And he eventually dies in the massacre. And what is told in the novel is first his own perspective. So Dong-ho, who takes part in these protests and who sees how the government forces just randomly start attacking people or just fighting back or even just attacking random people on the street. And he's in the middle of it and he doesn't stop, although he's just a 15-year-old boy, and he even loses a very good friend in this massacre, which is going on for, I think, in total 10 days. And as I said, he eventually dies as well. And so first the novel tells his own perspective, but it's also not from his own perspective, but it says you. So it's just like it's addressing. And later on, after the first chapter where his own perspective is told, the perspectives of all the people that he meets throughout these massacre days are told. So there's like his very good friend, there's the friend's sister, there's another friend, there's colleagues that he meets, like people helping out in the aftermath of this uprising themselves. The older student who just keeps organizing support for the people who have been injured or have been killed, and you just get a better glimpse of, through all these different perspectives, of what has happened and how people dealt with it. And it's extremely intense because Han Kang doesn't stop. She tells every single detail. So yeah, it's really, really intense, and it's really it really creeps under your skin, so you cannot just put the novel down and not care, I think, unless you're a human without emotions, which you probably aren't. So as a little bit more of background information, the Gwangju uprising, as I said, occurred in 1980, and Han Kang herself has been just moving out of Gwangju in 1980. So she's been moving away in January, and the uprising started later in the year. And she just moved away because her father wanted to move to Seoul, so she was in a way rather lucky. But she also felt very deeply affected by this massacre, and she felt like she really needed to write about it because she was not just some random person that didn't have anything to do with it, but she felt like she also had a responsibility as a civilian, as a person who's also walking this earth and who also knows the people or knows some of the people who have been killed or who know people who have been killed. And she just didn't want to just watch it and not do anything about it. So that's why she decided to write the novel, at least as far as I understood her from the interview that I've been watching, that she's been giving, that I will also link below. The massacre has been affecting the whole of South Korea politically, and it was traumatic for many people, so it's still something that people have to grapple with in a way. And this is what makes the novel so special, because I think Han Kang didn't decide to just look away or write about nice, cozy, fun, whatever kinds of things, but she really decided to take even that perspective of the young boy who was in the middle of the massacre and who tried to fight. But she's also she doesn't glorify anything within that novel, and I think that makes it so powerful. It's just so... Yet, as I said about The Vegetarian, the prose is quite simple, yet it's very intense, and that's what makes it so poetic, because the way she describes is so beautiful and so vivid also. She uses very vivid images, and that makes it very, very intense to read, because you feel like you can go through it easily. You don't have to think about complicated sentences or anything, but it really gets under your skin. You really feel it so deeply, and that's so strong, I think. And what is also great is that the way she handles the whole topic is very sensitive. So, as I said, she doesn't glorify the people helping, she doesn't glorify the victims or anything. She also doesn't really judge in a harsh way. She's writing things down as if she were like a witness, but still telling all the details that she knows or imagines from the different perspectives of the people, the survivors, the friends, even Jung-ho himself, and even the spirit of his friend who looks upon his own dead body, which is also an especially strong image, I think. And it's really raw, it's very emotional, and it's such a graceful and clever depiction of trauma and of a massacre that has actually occurred and the way that people deal with it. So it's absolutely, it just, like, as you might notice, I don't even find the words to describe it in so much detail. So it's really intense, and it's the best of the novels that I've been reading so far. So please read it when you find the strength, the time, the interest. The third book that I want to talk about is The White Book. It was published in 2016, and it might be her most poetic work from those novels, because it's told in many small fragments, and each of these fragments are like a poem in themselves. At least that's how it felt to me in many parts. And it is also a very deeply personal novel that defies traditional narrative structure, so that's also quite compelling and interesting. It is framed around the author's reflection on her sister, who died shortly after birth, and it contemplates various objects that are white, such as snow, rice, swaddling bands, and blank paper, each of which become a symbol of purity, loss, and memory within the novel. So it's basically this grown-up woman staying in a European city and thinking about her dead sister, mourning her dead sister, thinking what could have become of her, who she could have been, how their lives could have been, and just all through this color white, because it's all like connected, because that's all she remembers, or all she can associate in a proper way with that death of her sister as a baby. So it's really powerful because, as I said, it's very personal. It's born out of Han Kang's own grieving process for the sister she's eventually never really met. And also the novel's fragmented style reflects very well her personal journey, as each of these vignettes or parts become like a meditation on existence and mortality. And that's why I also feel like each of these single episodes can be seen as poems in themselves. And that's also why I felt reading The White Book was more like reading a collection of poetry in a way, but poetry that is really intertwined and connected very well. So that was something that I just personally hadn't read before. I think it is a very interesting way she arranges all the parts in this novel, and you still see that everything is belonging together. Both the form and the approach that she chooses makes it very special, because it's also something that you wouldn't really expect. I think that's something Han Kang does very well. She takes these ideas, these stories, these events that happen to people or even herself, and she turns them into a form of poetic prose. And she really also does not shy away from telling in very untraditional ways, also like making people talk although they are already dead, or talking to people who are already dead, and just surpassing this barrier in a way between life and death, and especially because these sections in the White Book are so short and so poetic, they create this very reflective and meditative atmosphere, which is quite different. Like for me, for example, the book Human Acts, it was screaming. It was really a book that was screaming. You really felt the screams of the people in the book. But the White Book, reading that, it was, for me, it was silence. It was feeling so different, just like everything around me was becoming numb in a way as well, and also just completely silent. And I think that's so interesting to see how a novel can change the feeling of the atmosphere around you that you have. So I don't know if you've experienced that yourself, maybe even with her work. If yes, please comment down below, because I would be really interested in that. But I think that's super interesting. And I think also like probably this silence is oftentimes connected to grief, to reflection. You just have to become silent yourself so that all these emotions can come up, and that you can just decipher for yourself what's going on within yourself and what's actually just happening around you. So that's a very, very powerful way she does that. And I feel like I hope I'm not going too far, but in a prose text, I feel like it's so much more of it can easily become like a babbling, just going on and talking. And with this poetic prose style that she chooses here, also like just having these shorter sections and breaking it down into these meditative, reflective parts that just forces you to stop, inhale, exhale, and just see what's just been happening, what have you just been reading, what's been going on. And I think in a prose, like just normal novel structure, you would just meander and flow through it, and not always take the time at the end of a chapter or something to just stop and reflect on it. And I think in the White Book, the whole structure forces you to do that, and I think that makes it so much more powerful, and also that makes it echoing in your head so much more easily. At least that's what happened to me. So that's what makes the book so poetic for me. And also the use of white as a motive for the book, this allows her to explore like all the themes that she's talking about, like absence, fragility, purity, and she has like a precision when writing about that, even like a painter. She's a very, very clear and precise observation of all those objects, of things around her. It's like the whole novel is very gentle in the tone, it is contemplative, and it's like deeply personal, and it just gives readers a great unique way, like a perspective into the way people grapple with loss, and also like the natural course of life and the not so natural course of life in a way. And again, you see the difference, humans, nature, what's happening, how are they connected, how do we eventually come to terms with our humanness, and also the fact that we have to die eventually and people around us to die. So yeah, just to wrap this up, it's basically her most poetic novel for me, and it's completely different from the other two. And the last one I want to talk about is Greek Lessons, which was written in 2011, but only translated to English in 2023. It is centering on two characters, a woman who has lost her voice and a man who is gradually losing his sight. And they two meet at a Greek language class, and their shared struggles with communication and loss form the heart of the story. And as they attempt to navigate their personal tragedies, their interactions become a delicate philosophical exploration of language, meaning, and human connection. So, just as a background, Han Kang has been interested in the limitations and possibilities of language, both as a means of communication and as a form of expression for a long time. And in Greek lessons, this theme takes the center stage, and also the characters' experiences with loss of their voice and their sight serves as a metaphor for deeper existential questions about identity and isolation. So I haven't read the novel myself yet, so therefore, unfortunately, I cannot really tell you what makes the novel special because I haven't read it. But I guess it is also, again, this very powerful contemplation of humanness, the act of communication. How do we communicate? What do we see? How do we speak? How do we interact with each other? And I think the great variety of what makes humans human and what we have to deal and grapple with throughout our lives, how we form connections and how we change ourselves and our surroundings. I think these are like the big questions that Han Kang is always dealing with in her novels. So I hope I could give you an impression of the 4 novels that have been translated into English so far. She also has been writing short stories and poetry and also other novels, but all of them, as far as I've seen, have not yet been translated into English. Some have been translated into other languages, the most of them I think in Japanese, but I guess most of you are not able to read fluently in Japanese. So I think we just have to wait for the translations eventually, but that's a lot to look forward to, definitely. And you can also check the website of Han Kang because the translations are all listed on the website, so translations into all the different languages. So your language might be part of that. To wrap things up, just keep in mind that Han Kang is the first Asian woman ever to receive the Nobel-prize for Literature, so that's a great achievement, and it's also a great choice because she's not just any writer. She's been writing about historical trauma, she's been writing about personal development, about societal structures, about human communication and the way we interact with each other, and so many other themes that are so strong and powerful. And that's definitely just one of the most important reasons why you should check out her work, but also her absolutely wonderful prose that really is quite poetic, which also comes from the background that she has as a poetry writer, I think. And just to finish things off, I quickly want to mention that she has also been another novel that's coming out in English in 2025. It is called We Do Not Part. And I just want to read the synopsis to you so that you can see whether you're interested. Not because I want to advertise for it, but just because I'm very excited about Han Kang's writing and I think everyone should get a chance to read her work. So it says, one winter morning, Kyung-ha receives an urgent message from her friend In-sun to visit her at a hospital in Seoul. In-sun has injured herself in an accident and she begs Kyung-ha to return to Jeju Island, where she lives to save a beloved pet, a white bird called Ama. A snowstorm hits the island when Kyung-ha arrives. She must reach In-sun's house at all costs, but the icy wind and squalls slow her down as night begins to fall. She wonders if she will arrive in time to save the animal, or even survive the terrible cold that envelops her with every step. Lost in a world of snow, she doesn't yet suspect the vertiginous plunge into the darkness that awaits her at her friend's house. Blurring the boundaries between dream and reality, We Do Not Part powerfully illuminates a forgotten chapter in Korean history, buried for decades, bringing to light the lost voices of the past to save them from oblivion. Both a hymn to an enduring friendship and an argument for remembering, it is the story of profound love in the face of unspeakable violence and a celebration of life, however fragile it might be. And I think even just through that synopsis, you can see this kind of gentle, simple yet not simplistic, poetic prose that for me, characterizes Han Kang's writing style. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching if you stayed till the end. Consider subscribing to the channel if you're interested, and I would love to see you in my next video. Thank you and bye bye.